The council chamber on Axis Prime was the largest room Jake had ever seen. It stretched upward for what seemed like miles, with seats arranged in circular tiers that held representatives from 200 different worlds. Light came from sources Jake could not identify, casting everything in a soft blue glow that made the alien faces around him look even stranger than they already were. Jake sat in the human section, which consisted of exactly 3 seats. Earth had joined the Galactic Council only 15 years ago, and they were still considered newcomers. Most of the older species barely acknowledged their presence. Jake was fine with that. He preferred to listen and learn rather than demand attention. He was here to discuss trade agreements for agricultural products. Earth had developed farming techniques that worked on dozens of different world types, and several species wanted access to human food production methods. It was boring work, but important. Jake had spent 5 years as a diplomat, and he understood that boring work often mattered more than dramatic speeches. The current speaker was from the Empire. His name was, and he held the title of Supreme Coordinator. Jake had never seen him in person before, only in recorded messages. Was tall, nearly 8 feet, with blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the chamber lights. His eyes were completely black, without any visible pupil or iris. He wore robes that looked like they cost more than Jake's annual salary. What struck Jake most was how the other delegates treated. They listened when he spoke. They did not interrupt. When he made a joke, they laughed, even when it was not funny. The Empire controlled 40 star systems and had the largest military fleet in known space. Power demanded respect and had plenty of both. The proposed trade route through human space is inefficient, said, his voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. There are better paths that avoid unnecessary complications. Jake leaned forward. The trade route in question would cut travel time between the outer rim and the core worlds by nearly 30%. It passed through 3 human star systems, which meant Earth would collect modest fees for passage and maintenance. More importantly, it would bring human worlds into regular contact with dozens of other species. Trade meant relationships, and relationships meant security. If I may address the council, Jake said, standing up. His voice sounded small in the enormous room, but the translation devices carried his words to every delegate. turned those black eyes toward Jake. The human wishes to speak. How charming. Several delegates made sounds that Jake's translator rendered as laughter. He ignored it. The proposed route benefits multiple species, not just humanity. The cost analysis shows significant savings in fuel and time. I have the data here if the Council wishes to review it. The data said, as if the word amused him. Humans always have data. You measure and calculate everything as if numbers could replace wisdom. He gestured dismissively. Your species has been in space for barely a century. The Empire has navigated the stars for 12,000 years. Perhaps you should defer to those with actual experience. Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice level. Experience is valuable, of course, but the mathematics of the route are clear. Shorter distances mean lower costs. That benefits everyone. What benefits everyone, said, his tone hardening, is maintaining proper order. Humans are newcomers to the galactic community. You should be grateful that established powers permit you to participate at all, rather than demanding special considerations. The chamber went quiet. Jake noticed that several delegates were suddenly very interested in their data screens. No one met his eyes. Well, we are not demanding anything special, Jake said carefully. We are proposing a trade route that helps multiple species. That is what the Council is for, is it not? Mutual benefit. They made a sound that Jake's translator could not interpret. Mutual benefit. Yes. Let me tell you about mutual benefit, human. 6 months ago, one of your colony ships entered space without proper authorization. We sent multiple warnings. They were ignored. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. He knew what was coming. The ship was destroyed, continued. A regrettable necessity, but one that reinforced an important principle. Rules must be followed, even by humans who believe their mathematics give them special privileges. That ship, Jake said slowly, was the New Horizon. It carried 3,000 colonists to a new settlement world, families, children. It carried trespassers, said. We broadcast warnings in all standard languages, including your primitive Earth tongues. The ship continued on its course. We responded appropriately. Jake's hands were shaking. He gripped the edge of his desk to hide it. The New Horizon was invited. We have the communications. Your own merchant sent us coordinates for a trade meeting. Perhaps there was some misunderstanding, said, and Jake could hear the smile in his voice even though the alien face showed nothing human could interpret as expression. These things happen when young species attempt to navigate complex diplomatic waters. Consider it a lesson learned. 3,000 people died. 3,000 people ignored clearly stated boundaries. That is not our responsibility. Turned away from Jake, addressing the wider council. This is precisely why humans should not be granted increased access to major trade routes. They lack the discipline to follow established protocols. Perhaps in another century or two, when they have matured as a species, we can revisit these questions. Jake sat down slowly. Around him, the council moved on to other business. No one objected to what had said. No one questioned the destruction of the new horizon. The empire was too powerful. Challenging them meant risking trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and all the other complicated arrangements that kept the galactic peace. The session lasted another 2 hours. Jake barely heard any of it. His mind kept returning to the new horizon. 3,000 people. The ship manifest had included 472 children under the age of 10. He had reviewed those files when Earth first received word of the ship's destruction. There had been families aboard, teachers, engineers, farmers who wanted to grow Earth crops under an alien sun. All dead, and called it a regrettable necessity, as if he were discussing damaged cargo instead of murdered civilians. When the session finally ended, delegates began filing out of the chamber. Jake remained in his seat, watching descend from the upper tier where the most powerful species maintained their positions. The Supreme Coordinator moved with absolute confidence, surrounded by 6 guards in dark armor. The guards were as well, tall and imposing, carrying weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Jake had heard the stories about. In 200 years of rule, no one had ever successfully challenged him. His guards were the finest warriors the Empire could produce. More than that, himself was supposed to be untouchable. Legend said he had fought in countless battles during his youth before rising to his current position. No enemy had ever managed to strike him, not once in 2 centuries. Jake stood up. His legs felt strange, as if they belonged to someone else. He walked down the stairs toward the chamber floor where was speaking with several other delegates. The guards noticed Jake approaching but did not react with any particular concern. Why would they? Jake was a human diplomat, unarmed, clearly no threat to anyone. "The Supreme Coordinator," Jake said, "may I speak with you privately?" I glanced at him. "I believe we have said all that needs to be said, human." Please," Jake said. "Just one question." Sighed, the sound emerging as a low whistle from some breathing organ Jake could not identify. "Very well. One question. Make it brief." Jake stepped closer. The guards shifted slightly, but they did not interfere. "Those 3,000 people on the New Horizon," Jake said. "Did you ever learn their names?" I stared at him. "Their names? Why would I concern myself with the names of insects?" Jake moved. Jake's fist connected with face before the Supreme Coordinator could even blink. The alien's nose made a cracking sound that echoed through the chamber. Blue blood sprayed across the polished floor. The first blow took 0.18 seconds. Staggered backward, shock written across features that had never known the sensation of being struck. Jake did not stop. His body moved with the efficiency of someone who had trained in boxing since childhood muscle memory taking over while his conscious mind screamed at him to stop, to think about what he was doing. The second blow was a hook to his ribs. Jake felt something give way under his knuckles, heard a sound like breaking glass. Tried to bring his arms up, but he was too slow. Far too slow. 0.34 seconds. The third blow was an uppercut that caught under the jaw and lifted him off his feet. The Supreme Coordinator's head snapped back, his black eyes going wide with disbelief. He had ruled for 200 years. No one had ever touched him. The concept of being hit was so foreign to his experience that his brain could not process what was happening. 0.51 seconds. As fell, Jake followed him down. The fourth blow was a knee strike to the alien's midsection, driving the air from his lungs. Made a sound like a punctured balloon, his elegant robes tearing as he hit the floor. 0.68 seconds. Jake grabbed the front of his robes, yanking the alien's face close to his own. The fifth and final blow was a straight punch that snapped his head to the side and left him lying motionless on the council chamber floor. A total time elapsed, 4.2 seconds. The guards finally reacted. They had been standing 3 meters away, their enhanced armor and advanced weapons useless because their brains needed time to understand what they were seeing. By the time neural impulses traveled from their eyes to their processing centers and back to their muscles, Jake had already finished. The strong hands grabbed Jake from behind, yanking him away from his prone form. He did not resist. He stood quietly as the guards surrounded him, their weapons now pointed at his chest. One of them was shouting something in that Jake's translator could not keep up with. Another was kneeling beside, checking for injuries. The chamber had gone completely silent. 200 species worth of delegates stood frozen, staring at the impossible scene before them. The supreme coordinator of the empire, the untouchable sovereign who had ruled for 2 centuries, was lying on the floor bleeding blue blood from his nose and mouth. Jake looked down at. The alien's eyes were still open, still aware, but filled with something Jake had never seen in them before. Fear. "And now you know one of their names," Jake said quietly. "Jake, remember it." More guards arrived, pouring into the chamber from every entrance. Station security personnel in uniforms joined the warriors, their weapons drawn but uncertain where to aim. The human diplomat was not fighting. He was not trying to escape. He simply stood there with bloody knuckles, watching as medics rushed to help. Jake felt oddly calm. His career was over. His life might be over. The Empire would demand his execution, and Earth did not have the power to refuse them. But 3,000 people had died on the New Horizon, and everyone had simply accepted it as the cost of galactic politics. Someone needed to show that acceptance had limits. And Kate pushed through the crowd of security personnel, her face pale. She was Earth's senior ambassador, Jake's direct superior. She had worked for 30 years to build human credibility in the galactic community. Jake had just destroyed all of that work in 4.2 seconds. Jake," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What have you done?" "Or what had to be done," Jake said. Two security officers pulled his arms behind his back, securing them with some kind of energy restraint that tingled against his skin. They led him toward the chamber exit while medics loaded onto a stretcher. The Supreme Coordinator was conscious now. making angry sounds that Jake's translator rendered as threats and demands for vengeance. As they walked him out, Jake looked up at the tiers of delegates. They were all watching him, some with horror, some with fascination, a few with what might have been respect. He had done the impossible. He had struck the untouchable. More importantly, he had shown that humans would not simply bow their heads and accept injustice, no matter how powerful the source. The detention facility on Axis Prime was designed to hold criminals from hundreds of different species. Jake's cell was a simple room with smooth walls and a sleeping platform. A force field hummed across the entrance, preventing escape, but allowing air and sound to pass through. He sat on the platform and looked at his hands. The knuckles were bruised and swelling. His blood had dried to a blue-black crust on his skin. He should probably ask for medical attention, but he did not want to. The pain felt appropriate somehow. The chamber door opened, and Kate walked in. The guards allowed her to pass through the force field, then reactivated it behind her. She stood for a long moment just looking at Jake. They are calling an emergency council session, she said finally. The Empire wants you executed immediately. Public execution broadcast across every civilized world. Jake nodded. He had expected this. Earth is trying to negotiate extradition. We want you tried under human law, but the incident occurred in council space. We might not have jurisdiction. Kate sat down beside him, her movements tired. You know what you have done, right? This will start a war. Will it? Jake asked. Or will it just expose the truth everyone has been hiding from? What truth? That the Empire murdered 3,000 civilians and no one said anything because everyone was too afraid. That we are all supposed to pretend it never happened, or that it was somehow justified. Jake looked at his bloody hands. Someone had to show them we will not accept that, even if it costs everything. It will cost everything, Kate said. Your life, Earth's position in the Council, trade agreements, mutual defense treaties, everything we have built. I know. Kate was quiet for a long time. Then she said, the security footage is being analyzed by experts from every major species. They are trying to understand how you moved that fast, how you hit him 5 times before his guards could react. I moved at normal speed, Jake said, for a human. That is what is scaring them. They thought they knew what humans were capable of. Now they are realizing they have no idea. Kate stood up. There is a named. She is human, works for the Council's research division. They have asked her to testify about human physical capabilities. What will she say? The truth, that Earth is a Class 12, that we evolved as persistence predators, that our reaction times are 4 to 5 times faster than most spacefaring species. Kate walked toward the force field, then stopped. You have changed everything, Jake. I just hope it was worth it. After she left, Jake lay back on the platform and stared at the ceiling. He could still see space, that moment of absolute shock when the first punch landed. 200 years without anyone daring to touch him, and a human diplomat had broken his nose in less than a second. The Empire would want revenge. They would demand his death and probably more. But they would never again assume that humans were weak. They would never again casually murder human civilians and expect Earth to simply accept it. Jake closed his eyes. He thought about the new horizon, about the 3,000 names he had memorized from the ship manifest. Children who would never grow up. Parents who would never see their new world. Teachers, engineers, farmers, artists, all dead because the Empire wanted to test how Earth would respond to provocation. Now they knew. The door opened again. Jake opened his eyes, expecting more guards or perhaps another diplomat. Instead, he saw Ben Carter, a human who worked in the Council's administrative division. Ben was not technically a diplomat, but he had been at Axis Prime for 7 years and knew how the place worked. Hey, Ben said quietly, stepping through the force field. I brought you something. He tossed a small container onto the platform. Jake opened it and found medical gel, the kind humans used for bruises and minor injuries. Your hands look terrible, Ben said, sitting down cross-legged on the floor. Figured you could use this. Jake applied the gel to his knuckles. It stung at first, then went numb. Thanks. Everyone is talking about what you did. The footage has been played 1,000 times. Species from across the galaxy are analyzing every frame. Ben smiled slightly. You are famous, Jake, and terrifying. I am just a guy who lost his temper. You are the guy who did what no one else could, was supposed to be untouchable. 200 years, Jake. He fought in wars. He survived assassination attempts. The best warriors from dozens of species tried and failed to harm him, and you dropped him in 4 seconds. Jake said nothing. The council is scared, Ben continued. Really scared. They thought they knew what humans could do. They thought we were just smart apes who got lucky with technology. Now they are wondering what else they got wrong. Good, Jake said. Let them wonder. Ben looked at him for a long moment. Was it worth it? What happens next? The council's analysis chamber was filled with holographic displays showing the same scene from 20 different angles. Security footage from the incident played over and over, each time slowed down to a fraction of normal speed. Delegates from across the galaxy watched as Jake moved, struck, and moved again, his body flowing through the motions with brutal efficiency. The doctor stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by military strategists and council officials who all wanted to understand the same thing. How had a human diplomat managed to do what was supposed to be impossible? "Play it again," said Commander of the Confederacy. His 4 eyes were fixed on the display. Full speed. The footage played. Jake approached. Words were exchanged. Then Jake moved and fell, all in the time it took most species to register that something was happening. In 4.2 seconds, said. 5 distinct strikes. How? Took a breath. She had been dreading this moment since Kate contacted her 3 hours ago. What she was about to tell the council would change how every species viewed humanity. There was no going back from this. To understand what happened, you need to understand Earth, she began. We classify worlds by their danger level. Earth is a class 12, which means it ranks in the top 5% of most hostile environments capable of producing intelligent life. Well, we know Earth is dangerous, said another delegate, a crystalline being whose name could not pronounce. High gravity, extreme weather, aggressive predators. This is well documented. Well, what is not well documented, said, is how that environment shaped human evolution. We did not become intelligent despite Earth's dangers. We became intelligent because of them. She gestured, and the display changed to show various Earth animals. Lions, bears, sharks, eagles. These are some of Earth's predators. Humans evolved alongside them. We developed persistence hunting. which means we would chase prey animals for hours until they collapsed from exhaustion. To do this effectively, we needed exceptional endurance and reaction speed. Many species hunt, observed. This is not unique. True, but most species in the galaxy evolved on gentler worlds. Let me show you something. Pulled up a comparison chart. Average reaction time for a 650 milliseconds, for a 580 milliseconds, for a 720 milliseconds. The delegates nodded. These numbers were well known. Average reaction time for a human, 180 milliseconds. The silence fell across the chamber. That cannot be correct, said the crystalline delegate. That would make humans 3 to 4 times faster than most species. It is correct. I have tested thousands of humans. Athletes can achieve reaction times as low as 120 milliseconds. This is normal for our species. We evolved this way because on Earth, being slow meant being eaten. Zoomed in on footage of Jake's first punch. Watch closely. Jake is not enhanced. He has no cybernetics, no genetic modifications. He is a completely average human in terms of physical capability. Yet he moves faster than guards can process. The footage played frame by frame. Jake's fist moved forward. The guards began to react. By the time their muscles responded to what their eyes had seen, Jake had already landed 3 blows. The guards are not slow, explained. They are elite warriors, the finest the Empire can produce. Their reaction times are actually above average for their species. But they are still operating on biology, which evolved on a world with gentle gravity and few natural predators. They never needed to be faster. You are saying humans are naturally superior to other species in combat? His voice carried an edge of anger. No, I am saying humans are different. We have advantages in reaction speed and endurance. But we are weaker than many species in raw strength. We lack natural armor or weapons. We have poor natural senses compared to most predators. We simply adapted to our environment just as every species did. Paused. The problem is that no one asked humans to demonstrate our capabilities. You all made assumptions based on our diplomatic behavior. Another delegate spoke up, a slug-like being from the Merchant Coalition. Earth has been part of the Council for 15 years. In that time, humans have never shown aggression. You negotiate, you trade, you follow protocols. Why would we assume you were dangerous? Because we chose not to be aggressive, said. That is not the same as being incapable of aggression. Humans understand violence very well. We fought wars among ourselves for thousands of years before we reached space. We simply decided that cooperation was more beneficial than conflict. Until now, said darkly. Until the Empire murdered 3,000 civilians and called it a regrettable necessity, corrected. Jake's actions were not random violence. They were a response to an unpunished atrocity. The chamber erupted in argument. Some delegates supported his position. Others demanded she retract her statement. A few simply looked frightened, as if they were seeing humans clearly for the first time. Kate used the confusion to pull aside. "How bad is this going to get?" she asked quietly. "Bad. Every military in the galaxy is going to reassess their assumptions about human capabilities. Some will want alliances. Others will see us as threats." Glanced at the arguing delegates. "We have been playing at being weak and non-threatening. Now they know better." Was there another option? Jake could have stayed quiet. The new horizon could have been forgotten like dozens of other incidents over the years. Humans could have continued being the harmless newcomers who do not make trouble. Shook her head. But then we would not be human, would we? We remember. We do not forget our dead. Across the station, in a secure medical facility, lay in a bed surrounded by the best doctors the Empire could summon. His nose had been reconstructed. His ribs were being treated with regenerative therapy. The bruises would fade in a few days. But the damage to his authority would never heal. An aide stood by the bed, reading reports from the council session. That has explained the physical differences between humans and our species. She claims moved at normal speed for his kind. "Normal," said, his voice distorted by the breathing apparatus attached to his face. "A human diplomat is faster than my guards. This is what she calls normal." "Yes, Supreme Coordinator. She has presented data showing human reaction times are significantly faster than most species. The Council is reviewing the information now." Closed his black eyes. 200 years. He had ruled the Empire for 200 years, never once showing weakness. He had survived coup attempts and assassination plots. He had faced down military rivals and political enemies, and a human had broken his nose in less than 5 seconds. What are they saying? The other delegates? The aide hesitated. They are questioning our actions regarding the new horizon. Some are demanding a formal investigation into the incident. We broadcast warnings. The ship ignored them. We responded according to established military protocol. Yes, Supreme Coordinator. But Ambassador has presented evidence that suggests the ship was invited into our space. There are communication logs showing our merchants extended an invitation for trade discussions. His eyes snapped open. What merchants? We are investigating. It appears some of our trade representatives may have exceeded their authority. They sent coordinates and docking codes to the new horizon without proper clearance from the central authority. So the humans were telling the truth. The ship was invited. Felt something bitter in his throat. We killed 3,000 beings who thought they were coming to a trade meeting. The matter is still under review. We do not have all the facts yet. But he could see it clearly now. Someone in the bureaucracy had decided to test humanity's response to provocation. They had invited the colony ship, then destroyed it, expecting Earth to protest diplomatically and eventually accept compensation. It was a classic tactic used to measure the limits of a new species. Except humans did not respond according to established patterns. They did not send formal complaints or demand council investigations. They sent Jake to break the Supreme Coordinator's nose in front of 200 species. Get me a secure line to the council, said. I will make a statement. Supreme Coordinator, the doctors say you need rest. Your injuries. My injuries are irrelevant. What matters is authority, and mine is bleeding away with every passing hour. Get me the line, now. The aide bowed and left, lay in the bed, feeling the pain in his ribs with every breath. He had made a mistake. He had assumed humans were like every other weak species that joined the council, eager to please and afraid to challenge established powers. But humans were from a... They had survived their environment by being faster, more adaptable, and more willing to fight than anything else on their planet. And they had brought those traits with them to the stars. The council had made a dangerous assumption. They thought civilization meant weakness, that diplomacy proved a lack of spine. They forgot that the most dangerous predators often appear peaceful right up until they strike. Jake had reminded them. In her office, Kate reviewed the latest reports with growing concern. 16 species had formally requested detailed information about human physical capabilities. 8 more wanted to discuss new defense treaties. 3 had quietly suggested they might reconsider their positions on various disputes with Earth. Everything was changing, and it was all because one diplomat had lost his temper. He knew, Kate said aloud. Jake knew this would happen. Ben Carter, who had been helping her sort through the diplomatic flood, looked up. What? Jake knew what his actions would reveal. He understood that hitting would force everyone to their assumptions about humanity. He sacrificed himself to change our position in the galaxy. That is a generous interpretation. Maybe he just could not control his anger. Maybe, but I knew Jake for 5 years. He never lost control. He was the most patient negotiator I ever worked with. Kate pulled up Jake's personnel file. He boxed in college, won several championships. He knew exactly what his body could do and how other species would react to seeing it. So this was planned? Not planned, but not purely emotional either. Jake saw an opportunity to show the galaxy that humans are not helpless. He took it, knowing it would cost him everything. Kate closed the file. The question now is whether we can use what he has given us. You mean leverage the fear? I mean protect our people. The Empire killed 3,000 civilians. They need to face consequences for that. Before Jake's action, no one would have dared to challenge them. Now, Kate smiled grimly. Now everyone is watching. We might actually get justice. The tribunal chamber was smaller than the main council hall, but no less impressive. 3 judges sat at an elevated platform, each representing one of the major power blocks in the galaxy. Judge of the Confederacy. Judge of the Independent Worlds Alliance. Judge of the Merchant Coalition. Together, they would decide Jake's fate. Jake sat at the defendant's table, wearing simple clothing provided by station security. His hands were bound with energy restraints that hummed softly against his wrists. Kate sat beside him, along with two legal experts from Earth who specialized in galactic law. Across the room, 6 lawyers occupied the prosecution table, their dark robes making them look like shadows against the pale walls. Behind them, in observation seats, sat representatives from every major species. This trial had become the most watched event in galactic history. Everyone wanted to see what would happen to the human who did the impossible. The judge activated the recording system. This tribunal will now hear arguments in the matter of Jake, human diplomat, charged with assault against Supreme Coordinator of the Empire. How does the defendant plead? Kate stood. Not guilty, Your Honor. A murmur ran through the observation seats. The lawyers looked at each other in surprise. They had expected a guilty plea followed by arguments for mercy. The defense claims innocence. The lead prosecutor rose, his voice filled with disbelief. We have security footage from 20 different angles showing the defendant striking the Supreme Coordinator 5 times. The evidence is absolute. The defense does not deny that Jake struck, Kate said calmly. We deny that it was a crime. Our position is that Jake acted in justified response to a confession of mass murder. The chamber erupted in noise. Judges called for order while delegates shouted questions and accusations. The lawyers were on their feet, demanding Kate be held in contempt. Through it all, Jake sat quietly, watching the chaos he had created. A judge brought her gavel down hard. Silence. The defense will explain its position. Kate activated a holographic display. 3 months ago, the colony ship New Horizon was destroyed in space. 3,000 human civilians died. The Empire claimed the ship ignored warnings and violated their territorial boundaries. Images of the New Horizon appeared on the display. A beautiful ship designed to carry families to a new world. Now it was debris floating in empty space. During the council session preceding the incident, Supreme Coordinator admitted to ordering the ship's destruction. He described it as a regrettable necessity. He showed no remorse. When Jake asked if he knew the victims' names, called them insects. Kate pulled up communication logs. These are messages between the New Horizon and trade representatives. You can see clear invitations for trade discussions. Coordinates, docking codes, assurances of safe passage. The ship did not violate space. It was invited, then murdered. The prosecutor stood. Those communications were sent without proper authority. They do not represent official policy. So your government's representatives invited 3,000 people into a trap, then killed them. Kate's voice was sharp. And you think this makes the situation better? It makes it an unfortunate accident, not a deliberate act of war. It makes it negligent homicide on a massive scale. And when Jake confronted about it, the Supreme Coordinator showed no remorse, no accountability. He laughed at the deaths of 3,000 people. Kate turned to the judges. My client responded to a confession of mass murder with force. That is not criminal assault. That is a natural human response to injustice. The judge leaned forward. The defendant is a diplomat. He is trained in peaceful conflict resolution. Why did he not pursue formal channels? Formal channels? Kate pulled up more data. In the 15 years since Earth joined the Galactic Council, 43 incidents have occurred where human civilians were killed by other species. 43. In every case, we filed formal complaints. We followed proper procedures. Do you know how many resulted in meaningful consequences? 0, not 1. She let that sink in before continuing. Humans tried diplomacy. We tried following the rules. And we watched our people die while the galaxy looked away because enforcing justice might upset powerful empires. Jake showed what happens when civilized behavior is mistaken for weakness. He showed the behavior of a savage, the prosecutor said. Uncivilized violence has no place in galactic society. Was destroying the New Horizons civilized? Were those 3,000 deaths carried out with proper galactic etiquette? Kate's hands were shaking, but her voice remained steady. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot murder human civilians and then demand we remain peaceful in response. That is not civilization. That is tyranny. The chamber went quiet. Even the lawyers seemed uncertain how to respond. The judge called for the security footage to be played. Everyone watched as Jake approached, asked his question, and then moved with blinding speed. 5 blows in 4.2 seconds. The Supreme Coordinator on the ground, bleeding and shocked. The defendant's physical capabilities are clearly superior to standards, Judge observed. Was this a fair fight? There was no fight. Kate said. Jake struck an unprepared opponent. If had believed himself in danger, his guards would have been positioned differently. The Supreme Coordinator felt safe because he assumed Jake was harmless. That assumption was based on ignorance, not Jake's deception. The human concealed his capabilities, the prosecutor argued. He pretended to be weak, then attacked when the Supreme Coordinator's guard was down. This is dishonorable. Jake never claimed to be weak. Earth never claimed humans were incapable of violence. You all simply assumed it because we chose diplomacy over conflict. That was your mistake, not our deception. The doctor was called to testify. She explained human evolution, reaction times, and physical capabilities in detail that made several delegates visibly uncomfortable. By the time she finished, it was clear that Jake had not been enhanced or modified in any way. He was simply human, and humans were far more dangerous than anyone realized. If humans are this capable, Judge said, why has Earth not pursued more aggressive policies? Why diplomacy instead of military expansion? Because we learned, said quietly. Humans fought among ourselves for thousands of years. We nearly destroyed our own world multiple times. When we finally reached the stars, we decided to be better than our history. We chose cooperation over conquest. But that does not mean we forgot how to fight. It means we prefer not to. Himself, appearing via holographic projection since his doctors had not cleared him for travel. His nose was still bandaged, his voice mechanical through the translation system. I am the Supreme Coordinator of the Empire, he said. For 200 years I have served my people with honor. I have fought in wars. I have survived assassination attempts. No enemy has ever successfully struck me in combat. He paused, and everyone could see the anger burning in his black eyes. Then a human diplomat, unarmed and alone, broke my nose in front of the entire Galactic Council. He moved so fast my guards could not react. He made me look weak, vulnerable. This cannot stand. The Empire demands justice. Jake must be executed as an example to any species that might consider similar actions. Kate stood for cross-examination. Supreme Coordinator, do you maintain that the destruction of the New Horizon was justified? I maintain that it was necessary. The ship violated our space. after being invited by your representatives. Those representatives exceeded their authority. Their actions do not represent official policy. But you ordered the ship destroyed without verifying whether the invitation was legitimate. Hesitated. We issued warnings. They were not heeded. Kate pulled up more communication logs. These are the warnings you issued, all in military codes that civilian ships do not have the equipment to translate. You sent messages they could not read, then destroyed them for not responding. That is standard military protocol. So standard that it conveniently ensures ships cannot comply, giving you justification to destroy them. Kate's voice hardened. This was not a mistake, Supreme Coordinator. This was a test. You wanted to see how Earth would respond to provocation. You murdered 3,000 people to measure human resolve. That is absurd speculation. Is it? Because my government has been investigating. We have found evidence of similar incidents involving other new species. Ships invited into space, then destroyed for supposed violations. Every time, the pattern is the same. You test new species to see if they will fight back or accept diplomatic excuses. The lawyers were on their feet, objecting loudly. But Kate pressed forward. You made a mistake with humanity. You thought we would file complaints and accept compensation like everyone else. You forgot that humans evolved on a we do not respond to threats with paperwork. We respond with action. The human attacked me without warning or provocation. Projection flickered with his anger. That is not acceptable by any standard of civilized behavior. You confessed to murdering 3,000 civilians and called them insects. To a human, that is not just provocation. That is a declaration that you consider our species beneath consideration. Jake showed you we are not. The testimony continued for hours. Witnesses from multiple species were called. Some supported the position, arguing that assault could not be justified regardless of circumstances. Others suggested that perhaps the established powers had grown too comfortable with their unchallenged authority. Finally, the judges called for a recess. They would deliberate privately and announce their verdict the following day. That night, Jake sat in his cell with Kate and Ben. They did not talk much. There was little left to say. Everything was in the judge's hands now. Well, whatever happens, Jake said finally, it was worth it. They will never forget what happened. Every species will think twice before assuming humans are weak. They will also think twice before trusting us, Kate said. You have made us feared, Jake. That is not the same as respected. Maybe not, but it is better than being dismissed. Jake looked at his still bruised knuckles. 3,000 people died and called them insects. Someone had to answer for that. Someone had to show we will not accept such treatment. Even if it costs your life, even then. Ben stood up. I should go. The verdict comes tomorrow, and you both need rest. He paused at the force field. For what it is worth, Jake, I am glad you did it. Someone needed to. After he left, Kate sat in silence for a long moment. Then she said, if the judges rule against you, Earth will not accept it quietly. We are already preparing diplomatic measures, economic sanctions, military positioning. Your action has united humanity in a way I have never seen before. That was not my intention. Perhaps not, but it is the result. Kate stood. Get some sleep if you can. Tomorrow we learn what kind of galaxy we will be living in. Alone, Jake lay on the sleeping platform and thought about the new horizon. He had memorized every name on that ship. 3,000 individuals, each with their own dreams and hopes. They would never see them fulfilled. But they would be remembered, and their deaths would not be dismissed as regrettable necessity. That at least was something. The tribunal chamber was silent as the three judges took their positions. Jake stood at the defendant's table, his face calm despite the bruises that still colored his knuckles. Kate stood beside him, her jaw tight with tension. In the observation seats, representatives from 200 worlds waited to hear a verdict that would shape the future of galactic politics. The judge spoke first. This tribunal has reviewed all evidence and testimony in the matter of Jake. We have analyzed the security footage, consulted with experts from multiple species, and considered the arguments of both prosecution and defense. What we have discovered troubles us deeply. He paused, looking directly at its holographic projection. The Supreme Coordinator, your government's actions regarding the New Horizon constitute negligent homicide on a massive scale. Whether the invitation was authorized or not, 3,000 civilians died because of incompetence and cruelty. This tribunal formally censures the empire and orders immediate reparations to the victims' families. The lawyers erupted in protest, but Judge continued over their objections. However, we cannot ignore that Jake committed assault against a diplomatic official in council space. Regardless of provocation, such violence threatens the foundation of our civilized society. Kate's hand found Jake's arm, squeezing once. Judge spoke next. The tribunal recognizes that standard punishment for this crime would be execution. The empire has demanded nothing less. But we also recognize the extraordinary circumstances surrounding this incident. Jake acted in response to a confession of mass murder, delivered with no remorse or acknowledgement of wrongdoing. She glanced at her fellow judges before continuing. After lengthy deliberation, we have reached a compromise verdict. Jake will be expelled from diplomatic service permanently. He is banned from council space for a period of 20 years. Any violation of this ban will result in immediate arrest and imprisonment. The chamber exploded with noise. Some delegates shouted their approval, others their outrage. The lawyers were demanding to speak, claiming the punishment was insufficient. Kate stood silent, relief and anger warring across her face. This is unacceptable. His projection flickered with his fury. The human attacked the supreme coordinator of the empire. He must face execution. The judge leaned forward. Supreme Coordinator, your government murdered 3,000 civilians. You confessed to this publicly and showed no remorse. You called them insects. The only reason you are not facing criminal charges yourself is because of your diplomatic immunity. Do not push your luck. My government acted within established military protocol. Your government invited civilians into a trap and killed them. Then you expected the victim species to simply accept diplomatic excuses. Jake showed that humans do not accept such treatment. Consider yourself fortunate that the tribunal has decided to punish him at all. This projection vanished, cutting the connection. The lawyers gathered their materials and left without another word. The trial was over. Jake felt strange. He had expected execution or life imprisonment. Instead, he was being sent home, stripped of his career but alive. It seemed almost too merciful. Kate leaned close. They are scared. The judges could not execute you without making you a martyr. Better to send you away and hope the incident fades from memory. Will it? No, this changes everything. You know that. The guards came to escort Jake back to his cell for processing. As he left the chamber, delegates from dozens of species watched him pass, some with anger, some with fear, a few with something that looked like respect. 3 days later, Jake stood at the docking bay where an Earth transport ship waited to take him home. Kate was there to see him off, along with Ben and a few other humans who worked on Axis Prime. What will you do when you get back? Ben asked. I have been thinking about that. Jake looked at his hands, the bruises finally starting to fade. There are 3,000 families who lost people on the New Horizon. They deserve more than just reparations. They deserve to know their loved ones are remembered. You are going to visit them. All of them, if they will see me. I want them to know that someone stood up for their dead, that someone refused to let their murders be dismissed as regrettable necessity. Kate handed him a data pad. These are the names and contact information for every family. I thought you might want them. Jake took the pad, feeling its weight. 3,000 names, 3,000 stories. Thank you. Jake, you know what you have done for humanity, right? The Council will never treat Earth casually again. We have leverage now, real leverage. Use it well. Make sure those people did not die for nothing. Kate smiled sadly. That is what I intend to do. Though the transport captain called for final boarding. Jake picked up his small bag, containing everything he owned after being stripped of his diplomatic possessions. He started toward the ship, then stopped and turned back. Kate, one more thing, make them remember. Not just what happened to the New Horizon, but what happened to. Make sure every species knows that humans will not tolerate injustice, no matter how powerful the source. I will, I promise. Jake boarded the transport. Through the window, he watched Axis Prime grow smaller as the ship moved away from the station. Somewhere on that station was recovering from injuries no one thought possible. The Supreme Coordinator's authority was shattered. 200 years of ruling without challenge ended in 4.2 seconds. The price for 3,000 lives. It seemed inadequate, but it was something. On Prime, the capital world of the Empire, political rivals circled like predators scenting weakness. For 2 centuries, he had been untouchable. Now he had been touched, struck, beaten by a human diplomat in front of the entire galaxy. His advisors suggested stepping down gracefully, taking a position as elder statesman, allowing younger, stronger leaders to guide the empire forward. Refused all such suggestions. He would not be forced out by a human's fist. But he could feel his power slipping away. Decisions he made were questioned. Orders he gave were debated before being executed. The myth of his invincibility was gone, and with it, the absolute authority he had wielded for so long. One of his intelligence officers brought him a report 3 weeks after the trial. Supreme Coordinator, we have been monitoring Earth's diplomatic activities since the incident. Tell me, Ambassador has been remarkably effective. She has secured new trade agreements with 12 species, 3 military alliances, favorable terms on border disputes. Species that previously ignored Earth's requests are now eager to negotiate. They fear humans now. Yes, the incident has forced a complete reassessment of human capabilities across the galaxy. Military strategists are running simulations. Scientists are studying human biology. Everyone wants to understand what else Earth has been hiding. I closed his eyes. We taught them to fear us. Now they use that fear as a weapon. What should we do? Nothing. We cannot undo what has been done. The humans showed the galaxy something we all forgot. That species from do not play by civilized rules. They play by survival rules. And when you threaten their survival, they respond with violence. The officer hesitated. There is something else. Jake has been visiting families of the New Horizon victims. He is reading their names at public memorials. Thousands of humans are attending these events. So humanity is uniting around him. He is becoming a symbol. The human who stood up to the most powerful empire in the galaxy and won. He did not win. He was expelled and banned from council space. He survived, Supreme Coordinator, and he made you bleed. In human culture, that is victory enough. After the officer left, sat alone in his office and looked at himself in a mirror. The bruises had healed. His nose had been perfectly reconstructed. But he still saw the human's fist coming toward his face, still felt that moment of absolute shock when pain exploded across his features. 200 years without being struck. 2 centuries of invincibility, gone in 4.2 seconds. He would remain in power. The empire was too stable, his political connections too deep for one incident to force him out. But he would never again command the absolute respect he once enjoyed. There would always be whispers, questions, doubts. Jake had taken more than dignity. He had taken the myth that sustained his rule, and myths, once shattered, could never be fully restored. 6 months after the trial, Kate stood before the Galactic Council and proposed a new treaty. The Chamber of Remembrance Act would require all species to maintain public records of civilians killed in military or diplomatic incidents. Names, ages, families, everything preserved and accessible. For too long, we have treated civilian casualties as statistics, Kate said. Numbers on reports, acceptable losses in pursuit of greater goals. The New Horizon tragedy showed us the cost of such thinking. 3,000 people reduced to insects in the eyes of those who killed them. She activated a display showing names. Thousands of them scrolling slowly across the holographic screen. These are the victims of the New Horizon. These are the people's supreme coordinator called insects. My colleague Jake made sure the galaxy would remember them. Now I am asking you all to ensure no future victims are forgotten in the same way. The proposal faced immediate opposition from several powerful empires. They argued it would complicate military operations, create excessive bureaucracy, and encourage revenge-seeking behavior from victim species. But many smaller species supported it. They had lost people to the callous policies of larger powers and wanted those deaths acknowledged. The debate lasted for weeks, becoming one of the most contentious issues in Council history. Finally, a compromise was reached. The Chamber of Remembrance Act passed with modifications. It would be voluntary for military casualties, but mandatory for civilian deaths in diplomatic or trade incidents. Each species would maintain their own records, but those records had to be accessible to anyone who requested them. It was not everything Kate wanted, but it was something. A small victory built on Jake's sacrifice. 1 year after striking, Jake stood at a memorial on Earth. It was a simple structure, a wall of black stone with 3,000 names carved into its surface. Families came here to remember their dead, to touch names and speak to those who could no longer answer. Jake had visited all 3,000 families over the past year. Some had welcomed him. Others had been angry, blaming him for not preventing the deaths in the first place. A few had forgiven him, understanding that he had done what he could with the tools available. Now he stood at the memorial with Ben Carter, who had left Axis Prime to work for Earth's diplomatic corps. Kate sends her regards, Ben said. She is negotiating a mutual defense pact with the Federation. They want humans as military advisors. Because they are scared of us. Because they respect our capabilities. There is a difference. Ben looked at the wall of names. You changed everything, Jake. Earth has more influence now than we ever had when we were trying to be harmless and cooperative. At what cost? At the cost of 3,000 lives and your career. But those lives were already lost. You just made sure they mattered. Jake ran his fingers over one of the names. Sarah Brooks, age 7. She had been traveling to the new colony with her parents and baby brother, all dead now. Forgotten by everyone except their families and the man who broke a supreme coordinator's nose in their memory. Do you regret it? Ben asked quietly. Jake thought about that question carefully. He had lost his career, his place in galactic society, and any chance of a normal life. He was known across the galaxy as the human who did the impossible, which meant he could never escape what he had done. But humanity was safer now. Earth had influence, and 3,000 names were remembered instead of dismissed as insects. No, Jake said finally. I do not regret it. 2 years after the incident, Kate addressed the Galactic Council again. This time she was not asking for anything. She was informing them. Earth is establishing a new military division, the Guardian Corps. They will be responsible for protecting human civilians in all corners of galactic space. Any threat to human life will be met with immediate and proportional response. Several delegates objected. They claimed Earth was militarizing unnecessarily, threatening the delicate balance of power that maintained galactic peace. Kate smiled. You misunderstand. We are not threatening anyone. We are simply ensuring that what happened to the New Horizon never happens again. The Guardian Corps will operate under strict rules of engagement. They will not initiate conflict, but they will finish it. She paused, letting her words sink in. I want to be clear about something. Humans prefer peace. We prefer cooperation and mutual benefit. But we will never again accept the casual murder of our people. Jake taught you all that lesson. The Guardian Corps exists to remind you of it. No one argued further. They had seen what one human could do when pushed too far. No one wanted to discover what an organized human military force might accomplish. That night, Kate sent a message to Jake on Earth. It was brief, only 3 sentences. They finally understand. Earth is protected now, thank you. Jake read the message and smiled. Then he went back to the memorial where he spent most of his evenings. He sat on a bench and watched families come to visit names carved in stone. Children who would never know their parents. Spouses who would never see their loved ones again. Friends who lost companions. All remembered, all acknowledged, never dismissed as insects. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity remembered its dead. And when you killed humans, someone would answer for it. That someone had been Jake. He had sacrificed everything to deliver that message. His career was over. His life would never return to what it was. But 3,000 names were carved in stone, and the galaxy knew better than to create more. In the end, that was enough. Across the galaxy, in the council chambers of Axis Prime, delegates gathered for another session. Kate sat in the human section, no longer just 3 seats, but expanded to 5 to accommodate Earth's growing influence. She carried herself with confidence now, the confidence of representing a species that had proven itself capable of both diplomacy and decisive action. When she proposed new trade agreements, delegates listened. When she raised concerns about border incidents, those concerns were addressed. Earth was no longer the harmless newcomer to be patronized and ignored. Earth was a power to be respected, and behind that respect was the memory of a man who broke a supreme coordinator's nose in 4.2 seconds. Jake would never know the full extent of what he had accomplished. He would spend the rest of his life visiting memorials, speaking with families, and carrying the weight of 3,000 names. But his action had changed humanity's place in the galaxy forever. They said no one had ever hit. They said it was impossible. Jake proved them wrong. And in doing so, he showed the universe that humans would never be dismissed, never be ignored, and never accept injustice, no matter how powerful its source. That was his legacy, and it would endure long after the bruises faded and the pain healed. Because humans remember, and the galaxy would never forget what happens when you force them to prove it. If Jake survives long enough to see it. Yes, if... Yes, Jake said without hesitation. It was worth it.